Hello and welcome to the July Culture Pilot Program. So I'm adding this addendum to the beginning because the first part of the meeting unfortunately was not recorded. That's the bad news. The good news, however, is that the bulk of the meeting and the bulk of the discussion and insights that were brought forward were recorded. The first part of the meeting, actually a chunk of it was taken up with announcements, and so I'm going to give you those announcements because those were pretty key and some key information for you to have. So I will do that now. Announcement number one was that those who will be at the annual conference, AZA annual conference in Baltimore, we are having a live session of this program, and that session is entitled, Does Your Zoo or Aquarium Have a Culture of Conservation? It will be on Tuesday, August 30th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Again, that session will be for those of us who have been participating on these Zoom calls and will be there at Annual Live. Does your zoo or aquarium have a culture of conservation? Tuesday, August 30th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. And you can find that also on the website, the agenda for the conference. Second announcement is that we now have an official network on the AZA network communities page. So that community is titled Conservation Culture Working Group. And all of you are a member of that, and I will be sending out an official welcome just to let you know that you're a member. Anybody can join that conversation, and we'll also be moving resources there and creating a library of resources. Right now, these videos have been just going on YouTube. I'm going to be uploading them to that resource page as well. So the Conservation Culture Working Group. Left out the word pilot because as we go forward, this will not be a pilot anymore. This will actually be the working group, and we hope to create a good, robust community, continuing the conversation and also a place for resources. The third important announcement is that those organizations who originally signed up for this pilot program, a survey has been created for your organization based upon the original survey that was given to AZA organizations about 2 years ago. So about 2 years ago, the AZA created a industry-wide survey in conjunction with Dr. Jackie Ogden, who was the lead on that, and working with Antioch University. They sent that survey to about 20 organizations, and it went to all employees, volunteers, and directors in those organizations. A total of about 1,725. Actually, that's more than about, that's a pretty precise number, but 1,725 people responded to the survey, and initial analysis of the survey gave these results. It is still a work in progress as far as the analysis goes, but initially about 80% of the respondents were very proud of their organization's conservation work. But just under 50% didn't feel like their organizations were doing enough for conservation work. So another early observation is that many respondents were still thinking of conservation work as field conservation, opposed to being part of a organization that is a conservation organization, and whatever their job they may be doing, that they are part of that conservation work. So that survey has some good information, more to come on that, but specifically what will be coming your way is that we've taken that survey and we've modified it very slightly. There's just a few questions that were changed for ease of recording information, but the basic survey was not changed, and we're making it available to your organizations. And that will be, I'll be sending a unique link to your organization for that survey, and it's yours to do as you wish with it. The AZA will not be taking the data and analyzing it. If you wish to administer that survey to your organization and people in it, you're free to do that, and then you also will be your responsibility to do what you would like to with that data. So We're going to make that available to you. And those were the three announcements that we talked about at the beginning. The other thing that we discussed that unfortunately wasn't recorded was we did have some conversation as it related to last month's discussion and some of the insights. But like I said, fortunately, that wasn't the bulk of the meeting, and the bulk of the meeting has been recorded, and we'll just go ahead and go to that now.
How do we do that? Is one thing we have to do is make sure that people see the value in it and they understand the value in it, not only from the standpoint of their position at your institution, but for them personally. And so how do we communicate how it's valuable to them personally, I think is the key for any culture, whether it's a conservation culture or a culture of friendliness or a culture of, you know, being kind or whatever that is. What is the value? If they feel the value of it to them personally, it's easier for them to engage and be inspired by it.
Sure. I guess, is that value coming from job descriptions, that coming from orientation, or the, you know, job specific training areas? That could be a question on there, because if it's not coming from like an initial point, you may almost forget about it if you're talking, if you're not, you know, if you're in finance or if you're in a different area, that conservation may not feel like it's the forefront. Anyone have those kind of pieces, especially at the job description level or at the orientation level or within any job trainings as you're kind of onboarding new staff or volunteers and interns? Is that something in the happening at the beginning, or is that coming later in the training?
So I'll speak up real quick here, because one of the things that we very consciously started doing at Hogle Zoo was in the job posting itself, we make sure that we're looking for champions for wildlife. So that's our tagline, right? Whatever your institutional tagline. So we're looking for people who already have kind of this identity and coming to the organization, or at least they're thinking about it when they're seeing the job description, even before they reach out to make an application to us. And then we reinforce that when we start talking to candidates. We go through basically a 2-interview process. One is for, do they have the skills, the experience, can they do the job interview? And then we bump the second interview up to the executive level. And it's really about, are they champions for wildlife? And sometimes we ask, well, we do mostly always ask that very directly, but we also ask them about what does that mean, and how does that identity fit with them? And so we explore that in the second interview. And so that's one of the ways that we begin to make sure that regardless of the job we're hiring them for, that they're coming to us, one, because they've already kind of have some idea probably about they have a conservation mindset. And two, even before we've hired them, we've started to have that dialogue with them about being a champion for wildlife.
That's great. Jeff, have you seen a difference in some of the applicant process? And, have you seen, is there any measuring of that, if they feel like that's happening after the fact?
Yeah, we do. We definitely see, I think, a difference in that it helps, like if we hire a train operator, for example, for them to have that understanding of, I just don't operate a train, but I work at a zoo and conservation is a part of it. And so we ask the question, in the job you're hiring for, that you're applying for, how are you a champion for wildlife? How do you think you would be a champion for wildlife in this job? And so it really has helped create that across the board. Perfect? No, this is always a journey. I always have that caveat. I can never do a definitive answer. It always has to be a dependent, and it's a continuum, and it's always a journey. But it certainly has gone a long ways towards helping create that mentality among all our people. And then there's other things that happen as well. That dialogue continues to happen in the discussions we have in meetings. whether those meetings are departmental meetings or whether those meetings are all employee meetings, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot that still needs to go into reinforcing that. Then there's action. We do give employees now actual paid time to involve themselves in conservation work and some of those other things that begin to support not just the dialogue, but we understand we've got to start the dialogue in their head and also amongst each other.
That's great. So Jim, is your hand up for this question? Sorry, I must have missed that on there.
About these questions generally, I have some input in a branch.
Okay,
off.
cool.
Yeah.
My screens are very tiny, so I only see that little one here. So I just saw it.
No worries. So I think Jeff, I'm thinking about what you were just talking about, like the dialogue about how do we get people to talk about feeling part of a conservation culture, and then some of the systemic things that we can do to help make that real, right? Because I'm looking at question one and thinking about creating champions, advocates, and allies, and also thinking about what is culture, right? It's the product of values and behaviors. It's not like as mystical as we sometimes make it out to be, but it's deeply embedded in the systems that already exist. And so, like when we think about champions, advocates, and allies, it's a good strategy for getting people to get on board with the system as it currently exists. But we probably need to start thinking also about really from a designing for the margins kind of approach. Who are the most disenfranchised people from the conservation mission within our organization? And are those folks is that the janitorial staff? Is it the ticket staff? Who is it? Like who's the furthest from the mission, and how do we build a system that allows them to participate and not just reframes their current participation? You know what I'm saying? Like I think there are some systemic things that we need to look at that will help match the dialogue that we're trying to create. And I think the paid time off that you were just talking about, Jeff, is one of those good examples, which a couple other people have mentioned as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. And I think Anna, has your hand up?
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking about is, so, we're a city department in Los Angeles. And so when we have for full-time hiring, we have to go through the civil service process. So we don't really have a lot of opportunity to how we do our questions and doing value questions. They have to be very particular. And what, for all of the, like we can bring on board people and go through the conservation onboarding training that we've created and do all of these things. And maybe those new hires might align with the culture that we're working to build. But Jim, you're totally right that like there is also, if you have a community who is internal community members who are not part of that, then is like bringing in people who are aligned with our culture into different cultures. Like how does that clash, right? And I think that's something that can be challenging to navigate. And for us, we do conservation annual reports or annual surveys every year. And one of the questions is, would you participate in conservation activities? Would it be if it was volunteered, if it was paid, however, a large majority of people say yes, if paid. But then the challenge that we have is when we provide those opportunities, we don't get a lot of people opting in because either because of the mentality that, well, it's not part of my job, or I don't have I don't have supervisor support, or I just don't have time if whatever those things are. And so I think, navigating those systemic issues of how do we build time into people's schedules that allow for them to participate in these kinds of activities. Because if animal care feels like they can't participate in these activities because they don't have the time, but learning engagement is like, yes, we're going to make time for this and we can make it work. then it feels like there's like this equitable issue across divisions that, well, these people get to do it, but we can't. And, you know, it becomes a challenging thing for me to feel like, how can we create equitable opportunities that everybody feels like they can participate in? And I kind of asked that a little bit in the chat, but I'm curious about, like, when we talk about those things, how that is working in other organizations that are offering that paid time, because we're just in the beginning of getting there.
Great. Michelle, I know Michelle and Stacia, you both have your hands up. I think Stacia before was a different part, but Michelle, are you answering the question or inputting the insight there?
I was just going to comment that I also think that there's a differentiation between part-time and full-time. So I think that a lot of times our part-time staff tend to be those that don't get included, and yet they're their largest, in a lot of cases, the largest portion of our team, and the ones that tend to be most disconnected. So I think that our challenge is making sure that we have the dollars and cents to do that in a mindful way and make it available, because I know I have part-time staff that would be more than excited to come and participate in one of those things, but I would have to schedule them to do it and the institution would have to pay for it.
That's great. Yeah, you're right. And then Melissa?
Yeah, so we do the paid staff days of action. And what we do is this is something that the executive leadership of the institution actually orchestrated and put into effect. And then we bring it down to kind of the management level, and the managers actually have to schedule the employees for one of these days of action. It is an 8-hour paid day for the staff, but the opportunities basically, we choose opportunities throughout the year and we repeat the same sites and we go out and we do cleanups. And so it's either a morning where you go out and do the cleanup, and then we come and we do a lunch and learn. So we actually provide transportation from the aquarium to the site, do the cleanup, bring everyone back, do a lunch and learn where we talk about some type of conservation priority that we have. And then the afternoon session does the lunch and learn and then goes to the afternoon site. So we pay a full day. They only have to do a half day and then they get the rest of the day of it. And it's working really well, but we put it as the supervisors and the managers have to schedule the employees and then let the employees know that this is their responsibility to do one per calendar year within the fiscal year. And it's working out really great. It is.
Great. Melissa, how often do you schedule those?
So we do them once a month and we alternate days. So I planned it out to where it is a different day of the week throughout the year. So we actually know when we have the most staff on site. So those 2 or 3 dates, I do maybe 2 of those on those days, but we also do a Sunday one, a Saturday one. That way we get the people that are there. And we just rolled that out this year and we're going to continue to do that year after year. And it's going really well. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I know, Eric, your hand is up, but Stacia, do you want to chime in since you had your hand up for a little bit of time now?
Sure, I can address both things we've been talking about. I originally put my hand up, which I think would go back to Amy's comment from a long time ago about just feeling a part of the zoo or aquarium and then also how do you connect those people, just to Michelle's point too, like we have a lot of part-time and seasonal, and how are they connected with conservation? So we do have stuff within our HR onboarding process, but again, does it land or does it not within that, short period of time? So here we have part of our actual conservation work and how we raise funds for our conservation projects we call it Step Up. It's kind of like Roundup, but people donate $1 when they're making purchases at our food and beverage or, retail locations. But a lot of times those are a lot of our seasonal staff or part-time staff and might feel pretty disconnected. And so that's always been a big push for us is I don't want anybody asking someone to, support our conservation work and not feel like they're part of it or not understand what they're asking about. So we did a huge push and we strategically plan this when we have the most staff on grounds, which would be in the full swing of the season. So we hit the part-time and seasonal, and we just provide some opportunities for one to engage with myself, to ask questions about conservation. We've made a lot of signage and other little things for them to understand and get connected more. But we also do once a month behind the scenes tours for them. Some of them are connected to our conservation work. I mean, they get to go down and meet the rhinos, and we have, some rhino conservation projects where, they make that connection just like our guests do. They get to do something that no one else is getting to do. And they're a little more attached, and we've found that works really well, because I take a lot of that time when we're with them one-on-one to again thank them for the work that they're doing for conservation, because the money they raise is a huge chunk of our conservation funds. And so I sometimes they know they're asking, but they don't understand how big of a role they play. So we really want to make them connected to that and thank them. And I think it also, especially if you're just coming here as a high school student, maybe just on the weekends, and you're working in the restaurant, you get here, you clock in, you walk to the restaurant, and you go home. So we do find that has worked really well. And we do the same thing. We try to offer those opportunities different days of the week. We get with those supervisors and managers and say what time is great. And sometimes it's actually even after their shift, but we do pay them to stay. But we do it so that it's not like, well, we can only send one person, or this is peak time. So we'll do it after the zoo is closed, technically closed, but guests can still be here. And so they can come right after they're done. And we have a lot of people that really participate in that. So we found that works with connecting, making that connection. And then we don't do the paid conservation days like people are talking about here, but we're struggling with the same, where you're not going to get the participation if it's outside their work time. We've created some on-site cleanups and stream cleans and different things that our executive committee really got on board with, and letting people go, saying it's going to be, you're here scheduled to work today anyways. And we offer those. If it's a cleanup, we'll do it on a Tuesday and a Thursday or something like that, where we're going to hit most people at least on one of their days when they're here. And what we really had to work on is having that come from like the directorial level or executive level, then communicating to the rest of their staff. We understand everybody's busy. We understand we have a lot of priorities. You as a manager need to feel comfortable sending your staff, and your staff needs to feel comfortable saying we want to go, and not feeling like they're going to get the pushback that we have other things to do. So we worked on that, but that's something else that, when you say that, you've got to have that buy-in across the board, and not only just people saying, yeah, we said it was okay, like really having that communication, especially from the top down, saying we support you sending your staff to this today. We're okay with, we're not going to get everything done that we thought we were going to today, so that they can participate in that, because it boosts the morale and it gets them back connected to that whole conservation and sustainability piece.
Sure. I guess, Stacia, too, like, how was the buy-in process? Were there issues, for different certain teams and such? And, how did you get to that point? Was that you that brought this up? Was it part of an executive meeting? I think that's probably an issue a lot of organizations will probably have to deal with, is the buy-in, and especially the size of the institution, it might be harder to get to that point. So
sure.
If you have any, insight, that'd be great.
So some of this initiated actually from our green team as far as the cleanups. And so they were doing some of these on their, like in lieu of a meeting, which that is on paid time because it's a committee within the zoo. But we went to some of the chief of zoological operations and the CEO and, said, hey, we really want to open this opportunity up to staff, because we do send staff, and we have a unique, I won't get into it now, but we have a unique system for creating champions for our projects all over the world. But not everybody can do that. Even when we're trying to send more people, like not everybody has that opportunity. And we were like, these are easy wins. They're easy to engage, our staff. And at first they were very supportive of the idea. There was some discussion on, well, you know, everybody always says they don't have enough time, and now we're, you know, gonna tell them to make the time for this. But then when we have, I mean, I think when you highlight one, it's an easy win, like you're already paying them, it's not an additional cost, it's on ground, so there's not a lot of travel time. We do make it a come and go of it, so like there's a set time, so your staff doesn't have to go the whole time, but they can participate at any amount of they want. It's voluntary, but but the thing was with the sorry, I got a little off, but with the executive committee, we just went to them and said, you know, like, this is connecting back to our mission. Everyone can participate. So when you talk about equitable, like anybody that's here can participate. And we're making it so there's different times of the day and the week so that more people can, you know, have a chance to participate. But also, again, that morale booster, like people want to be at their job and are more excited about their job when they, you know, are connected with what they're doing or connected to the mission. And so I think that was a big piece of the buy-in too, was this, some of the pros outweigh the cons, and we need to be flexible. And like I said, get on board with, yes, we have priorities. Yes, we have time constraints, but if this is something that's important to our institution, then it's just like the other things we're like, well, we have to do it. You know, like if something breaks or we're down 3 people, we always just push through. So, you know, doing this a few times a year, is it really that big a deal to, you know, to tell your managers that to make the time? I mean, kind of like what they were saying, where it's now a part of somebody's, like, they have to schedule that day. So again, we don't force everybody to come or say you have to make your staff come, but if people want to come, they don't get pushback. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for waiting. Also, Eric, I've been patiently waiting for a while, so I'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Yeah, well, thanks. I honestly, Stacia has probably just outlined every one of the challenges that I could have brought up as well. But I'll just say, you know, something that's logistically different for us is we do have our own field conservation department that has a very robust local field conservation program. So we do have the paid conservation days, and there was low participation at first, but it just takes a lot of reiteration, as everyone's been saying, encouraging supervisors to be proactive about scheduling those days, but constantly asking for feedback from the staff about what are the challenges and obstacles to your participation. And we find out things that we didn't expect or didn't understand, or, you know, we're too naive to to even imagine, like transportation challenges and things like that we do try to accommodate. And we have the almost weekly email that goes out that projects all the available opportunities for the next 4 weeks, so that people have a lot of time to think about it and plan ahead. But we always say too, you know, if your schedule doesn't match up with one of these days, let us know what day will work for you, and we'll figure out how to get you out, and we'll create an opportunity. But just being open and asking for feedback, trying to overcome those challenges has been the most helpful in overcoming the original low turnout.
Certainly. Thank you for sharing. I'm looking at the chat as well, making sure there's nothing else that we really kind of missed, which is large. Let's see. All right, look at that. Connecting, everyone's getting emails, it's beautiful. All right, anyone else want to share anything from that? Either already discussed, or, you know, we haven't really touched upon the last question as much from there. But yeah, I think this is a pretty robust conversation right now, and I think a lot of us are dealing with the same things for sure. So, Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, see if anybody else, we've talked a lot about like the easier kind of things, or the low end stuff, and sort of easy entry points. And I'm wondering if anybody else, we have what is an incredible opportunity of for any staff to apply for a grant to go do conservation work anywhere in the world, up to thousands of dollars, and take up to an entire month of paid professional leave to do that project. And I'm just wondering if anybody else has any like thinking about what it would mean to sort of attend to the other end of the spectrum, and are people who legitimately can't find time in their day to day, but might be the kind of people who would take a whole week or a month, or like, I don't know that those things are connected, right? Because a different set of barriers or a different set of approaches. And if maybe they don't care to jump in on something that was scheduled and planned, but if you give some of them the opportunity to write their own ticket to say, this is a thing I'm passionate about and here's how it fits, and what like that side of the conversation might be.
It's a good question. I know, Amy, I know Lincoln Park Zoo has a similar program for their keeper staff. When it has, trying to think of, there's a donor that comes through, you can you could do essentially a sign up, an essay and why this would happen, and then you're required to do it after your trip, kind of lunch and learn for the entire zoo. And I know a lot of people have taken advantage of that, and it's really helped. I know that Lincoln Park Zoo has spread their conservation, like actually working in the field from there. So I know that, and it's cool that you guys at Birmingham have that same experience, similar at least. So
yeah, and it's mostly animal care staff and education, but I would say almost every other year, there's like someone in finance, someone in membership, like, and anybody who is, I think you have to be full-time for at least a year, and then you can apply. So the idea is that it is, across all teams.
certainly, that's very cool. I'm not sure who came up first, but John and Anna both their hands up. So if there's a response to Amy's question, I guess, or another question, go first, and then we can go from there.
I was just going to say, we have a similar program, but it's really a conservation and professional development scholarship program. So it doesn't have to be conservation. Those projects get more funding, but we've had people take welding courses and that sort of thing as well. And we have had the opportunity on occasion to send facilities guys to conservation projects, international ones. But I was going to say, just in the big picture of what we're talking about, I think one of the things that really made a big difference here was really featuring this conservation work in our strategic plan, and then having our whole organization really looking at the big pillars of our strategic plan, and one of them being conservation, and it so even coming from above the CEO, from the board of directors, to understand the weight and importance we place upon it. So I think that's been very useful, and I think we often have board members as well as executive staff reiterate how important that is. So that's just been another aspect that we've done.
Great, thank you. Anna?
Yeah, we have what's called a Ornato grant, which is an advanced field studies grant from a donor. And I think right before the pandemic, in 2019, we had about 8 people go. But essentially it's sort of an opportunity. So it was originally only open to animal care staff. And then in 2019, it was opened to other divisions for the first time. I think I'm the only one that has gone from a different division. And also we've found that there are a lot of people who don't apply just because, I don't know, there's barriers to applying. Anyway, it's an application process. It can be, it's really a project that it can be whatever kind of project, as long as it fits within our conservation strategic plan and in our mission, and also is going to support the work of the conservation partners or the conservation project that they're going to, and not going to be a burden of having a staff member come for that organization. But again, I think that there are a lot of people, there's some people who apply, but they're generally already people who are engaged in conservation in other areas, whether that's AAZK or just in general in related to other organizations from their work. And so I think, finding ways to encourage people like from construction or other areas, divisions to apply is something that we kind of have to continuously reiterate moving forward, but also communicating that this is open to more people, and that and maybe even supporting the application process and supporting people in that, because I think the application feeling like you are someone who can apply to this and that it might be a program that is for you can feel, I don't know, you might just assume that you don't have support to go, or you might just assume you're not going to get it, or you're not skilled enough to go, or whatever it is. And so I think just kind of that's something that we need to do more of.
Great, thank you. That's very true. And I think that really kind of dabbles into a little bit about for next month's topic about what tools are there for building culture. And I think that would help in that. So that is our next month's topic for sure. I know we still have a few minutes left in here. Does anyone else want to add a couple other things about things we discussed previously, or what we have today? I think it's been really great to kind of share out kind of these trials and tribulations, and I think we are setting ourselves up for a great conversation next time, because I think we're all searching what are those tools to actually get us to that next point. We dabbled it with the hiring processes and having grants and such, but it'd be nice to really kind of take a deep dive and look at our own institutions and see other things that are lacking or things that we can do. Are they free? Are they, so I think there's a lot of pieces of that one. So anyone else have any last minute information you want to share?
Well, if no one else wants to speak, somebody mentioned, I think it was Stacia, about having staff as champions for conservation projects. We do something similar, which is another way to get a lot of people very directly involved in conservation. We have we have that Quarters for Conservation mechanism of generating revenue, but we don't. How we spend that money is through developing partnerships with projects around the world that we can get directly involved in. And we assign so our field conservation department kind of oversees the whole program generally, but there's a conservation committee that's made up of a very diverse array of staff from across the zoos that each person can become a champion for each of the partnerships, and then they get involved directly with being that sort of intermediary between the institution and the project, figure out how to develop their own expertise, their own resources into contributing towards that project. So that, whether that's, through education materials or public relations or veterinarians, there's a myriad of ways someone can contribute. And then in the constitution or in developing that committee, that we did recognize that there's some key positions that we would like to have as like permanent members of that committee, and built that into their job descriptions. And anyone that joins the committee from across other, avenues, other departments, we actually have an addendum to their job description that their supervisor has to sign off on, that during the term of their membership on the committee, that they are given at least an hour a week to spend their work time on the work of the committee, the work of conservation directly.
Great, thank you. All righty, we're about 4 minutes out. So if anyone else want to chime in, please do so. If not, we don't need to force it to the end. I get it. We've had a lot. It's a very busy time for all of us. It's summer. But I do want to thank you all for really sharing this. This has been really kind of interesting to hear. And I think we're all kind of poising ourselves up ready for next month's discussion. Again, that's what tools are there for building culture. And I hope all of you take some time, all the free time we have, to really take a look at this so we can really dive in next month to really see where we can go from there. But thank you again, all of you. It's been really great talking to you and seeing you. And keep on trucking on for conservation and for the summer season. So I think of it, nothing else, I think we're ready to go. So thank you
Thanks,
so
everybody.
much.